I would like to share relation on climate change, conflict, and gender. For the case of Cotabato in Mindanao, where the heavy fightings are happening here, one of the triggers that immediately causes the conflict recently is the massive flooding of the Pulangi the Rio Grande de Mindanao River, which runs around Cotabato. Now, how it happens, along the Rio Grande Mindanao River, along the immediate delta there, it's settled by Muslim Maguindanao people. On the higher ground, it's settled by Christian settlers. When the Pulangi River inundated around May and June, thousands, hundreds of families of Maguindanao people who are known to be supportive to the Moro Islamic Liberation Front started to migrate upland. And they settled in the Christian areas. So that started the friction. So armed Christian militias in this area started to think that the MILF are starting to invade their areas. So there was already tension in that area. Because the government don't have facility to support the IDPs caused by the flooding, because Philippine government tend to provide easily if there is war in areas, the displaced Muslim Maguindanaos were not able to receive support from government like rice or food. So what happened? They started to get food from the farms of Christians. So civilian militias among the Christians were able to coat some Muslim Maguindanaos getting their animals and their rice. That started the tension there. So of course, the military came in, the police came in, they ran after the Muslims. Of course, the Muslims ran to the MILF, and that started the whole conflagration. And it also coincided with the collapse of the peace process. That's another issue. The other case, in relation to gender, this is very, very important, because most of the people who evacuated were the women and their children. And the men were the one trying to find food. And they find food, unfortunately, in the farms of the Christians. So that's one case. The other case is in the case of Sulu. The Sama people of Sulu, they are usually living in the coastal areas. Now, these Sama people, they fish along the coastal areas with their non-motorized boats. When in the last 5 years, it was noticed that in the area of Sulu and the Moro Gulf, there is an increased big waves coming over there. So most of the Sama people are forced to settle in the coastal areas without any livelihood. So they are now mixed with the terrestrial tribes of the Yakans and the Tausugs. So there is tension that happens. Without any support of these displaced people, they started to steal food, they started to do a lot of things which leads to a lot of tension. Again, the immediate victim are the women. One impact of this is that among the Sama women started to work as household helps in the cities, in Zamboanga, for instance, in Hulu, and in other cities in Mindanao. And most of them can just read and write. So they become victimized in the cities. They return to their villages. The men get angry because their neighbors are the Christians. They started to attack the Christians in retaliation. So it's all of this cycle. Climate change is the trigger. And I think there's very little research being done in this situation. And I think it's not only happening in the case of Cotabato and in Sulu, it might be also happening in other parts of Southeast Asia. That's the big problem. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. I just want to maybe a hand to everybody for such a informative, really learning session. Before our quick break, I wanted to now just share with you how we would like to finish for the next until 5 o'clock, how we would like to organize this session. So in the morning session, in our legislation group, we basically went over the draft declaration one by one and made a comment and sought for requests for some changes, etc. And I think what we're asked to do for this session is to provide additional inputs from a regional point of view. Based on what you heard just now, there were a lot of very regional specific issues, like, the Mekong Delta issue, like how the river, the subnational, how you need to probably address it in a subnational matter, or the issue of migration, the linkage with conflict, I think could be overlooked. And in the global one, it's not mentioned there, for example. So if there are like 2 to 3 very gleaming, strong issues from Asia that you would like to add to the global declaration, we would like to put that together in the remaining hour. So when you go off for your tea break, please think about that. I think Tracy had already positioned us of how we should do that. Maybe make use of some of the words that's been provided, or maybe you can recommend something. But that's the exercise that we would like to do before we break. And before that, I would like to ask for a volunteer for a rapporteur, someone who can take note of, yeah? That wasn't a volunteer, but thank you, just hands for her. So she will be putting our notes together so that it will be reported back, and it will be also shared to the steering committee so that when we review the declaration tonight and revise it, we will make sure that we look at it. And I believe there's a time for reporting tomorrow. I'm not sure. I can't promise, but sorry, there is. But how we would like to report is that we would like to do it like a carousel, where each of the region will have their spot, and we'll be given like 2 minutes that people will be going with, a certain number of group will be going to each of the spots, and will be reported back of the regional, the outputs from the region. So I also need a reporter for tomorrow that will be able to represent the region and say, this is what's been discussed. And you will have to say it, I think, 3 or 4 times to different groups of people. But we wanted to just make it mobile and, interactive. So is there perhaps a volunteer to become a reporter for the region? Maybe somebody who hasn't had the opportunity to do a presentation? Anybody that might be willing to present? Well, then, if you can just think about it during the tea break, and if you're willing to volunteer, please let me know. So I guess we'll break for maybe 5 minutes or 10 minutes for tea, and come back, and we will work on the regional context of the declaration. So thank you very much again. We'll meet in, 10 minutes? 5 minutes? 10? 5, we'll meet in 5 minutes, please, because the tea is over there. Thank you. Because I think it would be better if there will be one recommendation or some addition or something per table. Sorry. That will represent the regional perspective, so that we don't have people all reporting back, but you come up with one per table, so that at the end we can consolidate as a region. So please, can you please join the tables, please? You're here with us. So here, this table, there are 6 people? Are you going to be here?